prettiest beaver pelts a body's ever seen. Story is some flathead woman taught you how to cure them skins so nice and purty. That's so, boy. You an Indian lover." Orrin chuckled deep in his throat. "Guess folks could rightly call me that, seein's how I got me a daughter whose ma was one of them Nez Perce. Always stood so tall and straight, like she was some kind of queen, when she wasn't no such thing. Made you feel like you ought to bow down to her. Raven, that's my daughter, turned out the same way. That girl fairly oozes pride." Orrin clucked his tongue. Her ma was some woman, all right. Died 'fore I learned the secret from her of how to cure skins so nice. Didn't seem no need for it while she was alive, and once she was dead, well, it was too late then. You're a lucky man, Cale Landry." Right then, Cale was regretting the impulse that had led him to save the talkative old man. He caught sight of his cabin through the blowing snow and heaved a sigh of relief, which turned out to be premature. Once the old man was warmed up, his lips loosened even more. "'Appreciate you putting Betsy in the lean-to with your horse. Mighty fine bunch of furs you got stored in there, Cale. You must have had a right fine winter of trapping. Beaver and marten and muskrat, all three. Me, I ain't been doing so well lately." The old man pulled a deck of worn cards from his vest pocket and shuffled them in his hands. "Wasn't for my girl selling buckskins with fancy beadwork. We'd 'a' gone hungry once or twice this past winter. Figured I'd hunt us up some venison for supper tonight. Would 'a' had a fine buck, too, hadn't been for this blizzard." Cale went on with his regular routine, gutting and cleaning the rabbits he had caught and making a stew from them. He did his best to avoid Orrin, who wandered around the small room shuffling his cards. Cale hoped the snow would stop by morning. He didn't want to put the old man out in the storm, but he had learned that when it came to survival, a man had to do what a man had to do. He wouldn't last another day with Orrin Schuyler yakking away in his cabin. "Nice place you got here." Orrin slapped his deck of cards on the trestle table that dominated the center of the room. "Mighty comfortable. That pine bed of yours looks big enough to share. You sleep in front of the fire." Cale pointed to the huge buffalo robe he had put down to keep the drafts from seeping in under the wooden floor of the cabin. He didn't intend to knock elbows with the other man in bed, but he had a feeling it wasn't going to be easy to ignore Orrin Schuyler's presence. With his luck, the old man probably snored. Cale turned a deaf ear to Orrin's chatter and surveyed his domain. The log walls were well chinked with a mixture of mud and grass, and the single window was covered with an animal skin scraped thin enough to let in a shadowy light. The door hung on leather hinges, and he had used strips of buckskin to seal it around the edges. Several kerosene lanterns provided light to work by. It was an extravagance he allowed himself, like the books he bought. After all, there wasn't much else he could do with his earnings, living alone like he did. Maybe the place was a little cluttered, but that was one advantage of living alone. He knew where everything was, because there was no one to move things around. And maybe he didn't clean as often as he should, but there was no one he had to impress. It stank a little, but that was the natural result of his trade. He worked outside as much as he could, because the cabin was too small to be truly comfortable for a man his size. Adding a second person had made it downright crowded. "Do you suppose it's snowing down in the valley, too?" Orrin asked. "Or just up here? Hope that girl of mine has sense enough to find some shelter." "You don't have a cabin?" Cale asked. "Naw, been camping out under the stars, waiting for everyone to show up for the rendezvous next month in Pierre's Hole. Figured to bunk in a tent with some friends of mine." "How old is your girl?" Cale asked, suddenly alarmed at the thought of a child left all alone in the storm. "Be 19 this summer. Believe me, Raven can take care of herself. She's got gumption, all right. Just ain't been tapped yet. Little bit shy's all. Don't cotton much to white folks, which ain't surprising, considering she ain't never lived with any of 'em." Cale had seen how capable an Indian woman could be on her own, but he wondered how much this white man's daughter knew of the Indian ways. "How old was Raven when her mother died?" "'Bout 6, I guess. She lived with her ma's people for a few years after that, till I could get back to pick her up." "Get back?" "I traveled round a mite in those days. Couldn't be bothered with a kid. Came and got her soon as she grew up enough to help me out." "When was that?" Cale asked. "Couple years ago. Been a lot of men sniffing after her lately, I can tell you."